The year is 1628. Off the coast of Imperial China, the patrolled junk Dragon's Breath cuts through a placid jade-green sea. The air is calm, the morning routine unbroken. But then, a scent drifts on the breeze, alien to these waters. Not salt or fish, but the cold sting of ozone and sweet, ancient incense. A sudden chill descends, and on the horizon, the lookout spots a shape that does not belong. A European galleon, impossible in these seas. Her three sails not white, but the black of a void, absorbing the very light of the sun. This was not a discovery, it was a violation. For the ship they found had officially vanished 30 years prior and half a world away. A vessel whose impossible return would be classified as a state secret, an anomaly that threatened the very foundations of the known world. The official record is a lie. History is filled with whispers, with ships that sailed off the map and into the realm of the impossible. If you believe the truth is found in these forbidden chronicles, then join our expedition. Cast your anchor here by subscribing, and in the comments below, tell us what part of the world you are watching from. There are more shadows to explore, and the tide is turning. To truly comprehend the impossible voyage of Nuestra Señora de la Sombra, one must first cast their mind back to the twilight of Spain's golden age, a period of breathtaking power and fervent, often fearful, piety. The year is 1597. King Philip II, the prudent king, sits upon a throne increasingly burdened by endless wars and the slow, inexorable drain of an empire stretched too thin. The flow of gold from the New World, once a torrent, had become a trickle. Desperate times, as the old saying goes, breed desperate measures, and the king, a man whose faith was as unyielding as his resolve, was rumored to be seeking a solution not merely in earthly coffers or military might, but in something more profound, something ancient. From the fragmented, heavily redacted entries found in what scholars now refer to as the Seville Protocols, a clandestine collection of royal decrees and whispers from the Holy Office unearthed only decades ago, we glean the first chilling details. Philip II, personally and in absolute secrecy, ordered the construction of a vessel unlike any other. Not a galleon of war, nor a treasure ship, but something forged for a mission so sensitive, its very existence was to be erased from all official records. The shipyard itself, nestled in a secluded cove far from the bustling docks of Cadiz, was a ghost of industry, shrouded by armed guards and the perpetual silence of forbidden labor. It was here, under the unblinking watch of the king's most trusted inquisitors, that the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra began to take form. Her timbers were of the finest, darkest oak, sourced from ancient forests said to whisper secrets of forgotten ages. But it was her sails, 3 of them, cut from the deepest, unbleached black canvas, that truly set her apart. Upon these sails, etched in thread of a peculiar, almost phosphorescent silver, were symbols that caused the master shipwright, a grizzled old mariner named Mateo de Torres, to cross himself repeatedly, his hands trembling even as he oversaw their hoisting. Mateo, a man whose life had been spent amidst the creak of timbers and the scent of tar, found himself plagued by an unfamiliar dread. He had seen strange ships, yes, and known of dark dealings. But this was different. The symbols on the black sails were not the familiar crosses or royal crests. They were geometric patterns, intricate and unsettling, reminiscent of those found in apocryphal texts long banned by the church. Forbidden in monastic circles, a hushed whisper carried on the salt wind from a nervous young priest assigned to bless the timbers. These sigils speak of a knowledge not meant for men, of paths that twist the very fabric of God's creation. Such were the whispers. They seeped into the very air of the shipyard, carried on the tides of rumor and fear. Dock workers, usually boisterous and prone to ribald jokes, moved with a newfound silence, their eyes darting, their faces pale. The ship, even unfinished, seemed to draw the light from the sky, her 3 black sails, though furled, appearing like swallowed night against the Spanish sun. It was said she was not merely built, but conjured. A vessel designed to carry not just cargo, but a message, or perhaps a secret, that defied the natural order. A message, the whispers concluded, not meant for men. And as the final planks were laid and the rigging tightened, a profound, unshakable dread settled upon all who gazed upon the Galleon of Three Shadows, a premonition of a voyage that would unravel more than just nautical miles. The construction of Nuestra Señora de la Sombra was a process steeped in an almost alchemical secrecy. Every rivet, every plank, every rope was placed under the unblinking gaze of the king's personal guard, men whose loyalty was as sharp as their blades and whose silence was as absolute as the grave. The master shipwright Mateo de Torres, a man whose hands had shaped 100 vessels, found his once steady grip trembling as he oversaw the final touches. He had built ships for war, for trade, for exploration, but never one that felt so utterly wrong. Her hull, though ostensibly that of a standard galleon, broad-beamed for cargo, high-pooped for command, was subtly different. Its lines, drawn from designs personally approved by the king and then swiftly incinerated, hinted at a hydrodynamics that seemed to defy the common knowledge of the age. Rumors amongst the dwindling and increasingly terrified shipyard workers spoke of strange, almost resonant vibrations in the timbers, even when the ship lay still in the calm waters of the cove. It was as if the wood itself hummed with an unseen energy, a captive force waiting to be unleashed. The true heresy, however, lay not in the hull's peculiar design, nor in the unsettling hum, but in the very symbolism of the vessel. The name chosen by royal decree, Nuestra Señora de la Sombra, was itself an affront to common piety. The Virgin Mary, Our Lady, invoked alongside shadow, a term more often associated with the infernal or the unknown. It was a duality that disturbed even the most jaded of priests. Yet, the king's will was absolute, and descent a swift path to the Inquisition's dungeons. And then there were the sails. 3 of them, as black as a moonless night in the deepest abyss, dyed with pigments whose origin remained a closely guarded secret. These were not merely black for stealth. They were black with an intensity that seemed to absorb light, to create a pocket of perpetual twilight around the ship. Dr. Alaric Thorne, a contemporary maritime historian from the University of London, notes in his seminal work, The Occult Fleet of Philip II, that such a choice of sail color was not only unheard of for a Spanish vessel of the era, but would have been considered deeply inauspicious, even sacrilegious. It flew in the face of all tradition, Thorne writes, a deliberate provocation to the very elements and the divine powers that govern the seas. But it was the symbols upon these sails that truly marked the Sombra as a vessel of radical, perhaps forbidden, purpose. Woven into the black canvas in threads that seemed to shimmer with an inner light were not the familiar iconography of the cross or the Lion of Castile. Instead, intricate geometric patterns unfolded, complex and unsettling. These were not the simple sigils of a merchant house, nor the proud heraldry of a noble family. They were, as the Whispers had foretold, symbols drawn from arcane traditions, from grimoires long interred in forbidden libraries. One particular design, a nested series of interlocking triangles and circles, was eerily similar to an illustration found in a single surviving fragment of the Codex Abyssalis, a text believed to have been penned by a rogue monastic order in the 13th century, a group excommunicated for their explorations into what they termed temporal mechanics and dimensional cartography. The Codex spoke of paths against the sun and sailing the currents of the unseen river of time. Such concepts were to the Church not merely heresy, but active blasphemy. The very air around the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra seemed to thicken with unspoken questions, with the weight of its forbidden design. She was a ship built not just of wood and iron, but of secrets and shadowed intent, a vessel poised on the edge of the known world, ready to plunge into an ocean of the unknown, her black sails promising not a journey, but a profound, irreversible transformation. She was, in essence, a ship of heresy, and her destination, whatever it truly was, could only be an uncharted realm, far beyond the reach of any map. With the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra complete, a dark and silent silhouette against the vibrant Spanish sky, the final, most enigmatic pieces of the king's puzzle were put into place. Her crew, assembled under the strictest secrecy, were not the usual boisterous mariners of Cadiz. They were a hand-picked collection of men, their faces grim, their eyes holding a peculiar, almost fanatical light. Many were former soldiers, loyal to the crown, but others were whispered to be men of less conventional backgrounds, scholars of obscure lore, navigators who spoke of stars not found on any chart, and even, it was rumored, a few who had been re-educated by the Inquisition, their past sins purged, their wills bent to the king's inscrutable purpose. But it was the three passengers, the three keepers, as they were morbidly dubbed by the few who caught glimpses of them, who truly cemented the ship's unsettling aura. They arrived under cover of deepest night, each shrouded in heavy cloaks, their faces obscured. Their identities, once revealed, sent a shiver of dread through the already superstitious crew. The first was an alchemist, a man known only as Master Theron. His reputation preceded him, a whispered legend of forbidden transmutation and a mind that sought to unravel the very elements of creation. His hands, though aged, were nimble, and his eyes, when they occasionally gleamed from beneath his cowl, held a dangerous, restless intelligence. He carried with him strange, lead-lined boxes and glass retorts filled with bubbling, iridescent liquids, instruments of a science that bordered on sorcery. Next came the monk, Brother Silas, a figure of stark contrast to the alchemist's arcane brilliance. He was gaunt, his face pale and ascetic, his eyes sunken from years of rigorous study and self-denial. Yet beneath the humble habit, there was a formidable intellect and a chilling aura of absolute conviction. He carried no weapons, only a leather-bound tome, its pages filled with intricate diagrams and script in a language few could decipher. It was rumored to be a copy of the very Codex Abyssalis, from which the ship's forbidden symbols were drawn. His presence suggested that the mission had a profound, perhaps even spiritual dimension, a quest for knowledge that transcended mere earthly gain. The third was the knight, Don Raphael de Montaigne, a figure of formidable presence despite his advanced years. His armor, though polished, bore the scars of countless battles, and his hand never strayed far from the hilt of his greatsword. But it was not his martial prowess that made him one of the keepers. It was his lineage. Don Raphael was the last living descendant of a forgotten Templar splinter sect, an order rumored to have guarded secrets far older and more dangerous than any sacred relic. His family crest, emblazoned subtly on his shield, depicted a sun devoured by a serpent, a motif eerily similar to the "sailing against the sun" inscription later found. He was the protector, the enforcer, the one tasked with ensuring the mission's integrity, by force, if necessary. These three, the alchemist, the monk, and the knight, each embodying a different facet of forbidden knowledge or shadowed power, were the true heart of the Sombra's mission. They rarely spoke, even to the captain, and their cabins were sealed, guarded, and rumored to contain instruments and artifacts whose purpose was utterly unknown to the crew. The departure itself was a spectacle of profound, unnatural silence. No fanfare, no cheering crowds. Just the creak of ropes, the splash of oars as the pilot boat guided her out of the cove, and the mournful cry of gulls. The Nuestra Señora de la Sombra unfurled her three black sails, and as the wind caught them, the ship seemed to become a living shadow, a dark, ominous stain against the blue canvas of the sky. Dr. Eleanor Vance, a leading expert in 17th century naval logistics from the University of Lisbon, notes that the lack of any official departure record, any port manifest, any witness testimonies beyond the Seville protocols is unprecedented for a vessel of this size and royal significance. It was as if, she states in a recent documentary, the Spanish crown wished for the ship to not merely vanish, but to have never existed at all. The last confirmed sighting of the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra came from a lone fishing smack, the Estrella del Mar, far off the coast of Cadiz, just as dusk began to bleed into night on a calm, moonless evening in early 1598. The fishermen, simple, God-fearing men, spoke of a chill that descended upon the water, a sudden, inexplicable silence that swallowed the natural sounds of the sea. And then, a dark shape, like a hole torn in the fabric of the twilight, passed them by. They described 3 black sails, catching no discernible wind, yet propelling the galleon with an impossible speed. And as it slipped into the deepening gloom, they swore they heard a faint, high-pitched hum, a sound not of wood or wind, but of something alien, something that resonated in the very bones. By morning, the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra was gone, swallowed by the vast, indifferent ocean. Or so it seemed. For 30 years, she became a ghost story, a cautionary tale whispered amongst sailors of a ship that sailed to the wrong place, and indeed, the wrong time. Her fate, sealed in the abyss of forgotten history, 3 decades. 30 years, a span long enough for empires to rise and fall, for generations to live and die, for the very memory of a ship to fade into the realm of myth. The Nuestra Señora de la Sombra became just that, a myth, a dark whisper among the grizzled sailors of Cadiz, a tale of royal folly and occult ambition, a vessel that had sailed into the unknown and simply stayed there. Her disappearance, meticulously scrubbed from official records, became a silent testament to the king's desperate, perhaps blasphemous, undertaking. Then, in the spring of 1628, the impossible happened. Far across the world, in the turbulent, mist-shrouded waters off the coast of Fujian Province, Imperial China, a Ming Dynasty patrol junk, the Dragon's Breath, was charting a course through a notoriously treacherous stretch of sea. Captain Li Wei, a man whose lineage stretched back to the great treasure fleets of Zheng He, was renowned for his caution and his unwavering adherence to tradition. The day was calm, the sea a placid jade green. Yet, an inexplicable apprehension had settled upon the crew. A peculiar stillness in the air, a scent alien to the familiar salt and fish. Something metallic, like ozone, yet also strangely sweet, like old incense. It was the lookout, a young lad named Bao, who first spotted it. A dark smudge on the horizon, too large for a fishing boat, too regular for a rock formation. As the Dragon's Breath drew closer, the smudge resolved into an impossible sight, a European galleon, its lines unmistakably Spanish, yet unlike any vessel known to ply these eastern waters. And then, the sails, 3 of them, black against the pale sky, black with an unnatural intensity that seemed to drain the light from around them. Captain Li Wei, a man who had faced down pirates and typhoons, felt a prickle of cold dread on his neck. European ships were rare this far north, and none ever bore such grim, foreboding sails. He ordered a cautious approach, his hand instinctively going to the hilt of his ceremonial sword. The galleon was listing slightly, her rigging a tangled mess, but otherwise, she appeared remarkably intact. No signs of battle, no scorch marks, no splintered wood from a storm. It was as if she had simply stopped, frozen in time. As the Dragon's Breath drew alongside, the silence became oppressive. No shouts from the deck, no movement in the rigging. The air around the black-sailed ship was unnaturally cold, a pocket of frigid stillness in the warm spring air. A boarding party, led by a wary Ensign Chen, was dispatched. They clambered onto the galleon's deck, their footsteps echoing with an eerie resonance in the profound quiet. The wood beneath their feet felt strangely solid, almost petrified, yet unrotted. And there, stark against the weathered planking, were the symbols. The intricate, interlocking geometric patterns, identical to those whispered about in the Seville protocols. The same forbidden sigils that adorned the 3 black sails. The ship was unmistakably the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra. Her impossible return, half a world and 30 years removed from her vanishing point, was a terrifying miracle. Ensign Chen, his heart pounding against his ribs, walked the silent decks. The air was thick with the strange, sweet, metallic scent. He found the captain's cabin door ajar and stepped inside. The scene within was perfectly preserved, as if the captain had just left his post. A map lay unfurled on the table, charting a course, not for the New World, but for the uncharted waters of the Pacific. And on the wall, a single, brass-framed clock, its pendulum swinging in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Only its hands were turning counterclockwise. The discovery sent shockwaves through the imperial court, though the full, unsettling truth was quickly suppressed, deemed too outlandish, too disruptive to the natural order. But the whispers spread, carried by merchant vessels and hushed conversations in tea houses. A ship from another time, a vessel that had sailed against the current of existence itself. Her impossible reappearance, intact and almost untouched, was a testament to a mystery that transcended the simple passage of years. The tale of Nuestra Señora de la Sombra reminds us that the ocean is not merely a vast expanse of water, but a canvas upon which the most profound and unsettling mysteries are painted. If you find yourself drawn into these depths, if the chilling whispers of forgotten voyages stir something within you, then please cast your anchor here. Like this video and subscribe to the Maritime Chronicler for more journeys into the heart of the abyss. For there are always more shadows to explore, more forbidden truths to uncover. The discovery of the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra off the coast of China was not merely astonishing, it was an affront to every known law of physics, every comfort of the natural world. The Ming Dynasty officials, upon receiving Captain Li Wei's bewildered reports, initially dismissed them as tales of sea madness, or perhaps a clever ruse by foreign pirates. But the physical evidence, the sheer, undeniable presence of a 16th century Spanish galleon, intact and adrift in 17th century Chinese waters, forced a chilling reevaluation. A specialized team, comprised of naval engineers, a handful of reluctant scholars, and a contingent of the emperor's most trusted eunuchs, was dispatched to investigate. Their findings, meticulously documented in the Jade Scrolls, a series of classified reports now residing in the Forbidden City's deepest archives, paint a picture of profound, unsettling anomaly. The exterior of the Sombra was a marvel of preservation. Her dark oak hull, though weathered by 3 decades of sea, showed no significant signs of rot or barnacle growth. The intricate carvings on her stern, depicting fantastical beasts entwined with the forbidden symbols, were as sharp as if freshly carved. Even the 3 black sails, though tattered at the edges, retained their unnatural, light-absorbing hue, the silver sigils upon them still shimmering with an ethereal glow. It was as if the very passage of time had somehow bypassed the vessel, or perhaps it had been subjected to a different kind of weathering, one not accounted for in any earthly climate. But it was the interior that truly defied comprehension. Ensign Chen, the first to board, had given a preliminary account, but the full horror of the galleon's inner sanctum was yet to be revealed. The air inside the ship was unnaturally cold, heavy with that peculiar scent of ozone and sweet, ancient incense. There was no must, no dampness, no stench of decay that typically permeates a vessel adrift for decades. Instead, a profound, almost sterile stillness. The crew's quarters were found in a state of suspended animation. Hammocks swayed gently, as if the ship were still underway, yet no breeze stirred. Clothing lay folded, personal effects meticulously arranged. Plates of food, though desiccated, were still on tables, untouched, as if the crew had simply vanished mid-meal. There was no sign of struggle, no panic, no indication of a sudden event that might have claimed them. It was a snapshot of ordinary life, frozen in an impossible moment. The most disturbing discovery, however, lay within the sealed cabin of the 3 keepers. This chamber, located deep within the galleon's heart, was found locked from the inside, its heavy oak door reinforced with iron bands and an intricate, rusted mechanism of gears and levers. It took the engineers nearly a full day to dismantle it, their tools often sparking against what felt like an invisible, unyielding force. When the door finally yielded with a groaning sigh, the air that spilled forth was even colder, denser, and carried an almost electric charge. The eunuchs, hardened men of the court, recoiled, their faces pale. Inside, the cabin was a microcosm of the ship's greater anomaly. Dust motes hung suspended in the air, caught in the faint light filtering from the single, barred porthole. Scrolls lay unfurled on a heavy table, their ink still wet, their contents a bewildering array of astronomical charts, alchemical formulae, and strange geometric equations. Quills lay beside them, as if the writers had simply paused mid-stroke. And then, the objects that truly broke the minds of the investigators. In the center of the table, a brass-framed clock, its pendulum swinging with a hypnotic rhythm, its hands indeed turning counterclockwise, the minute hand ticking against the natural flow of time. On a small iron stand, a thick beeswax candle, its wick still glowing with a faint, steady flame, was found submerged in a bowl of brackish water, yet it burned, defying the very laws of combustion. And perhaps most unsettling of all, arranged meticulously on a shelf, were 3 small, intricately carved wooden figures, a miniature alchemist, a monk, and a knight, their faces frozen in expressions of profound, unsettling serenity. The Nuestra Señora de la Sombra was not merely a ship found after decades. She was a vessel where time had warped, where the impossible had become commonplace. She was a chilling, perfectly preserved anomaly, a floating paradox that hinted at a voyage far beyond the understanding of any mortal man, a journey not just across the ocean, but through the very fabric of reality itself. Her interior was a museum of the impossible, a silent, frozen testament to a truth too terrifying to comprehend. The discovery of the backward-running clock within the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra's sealed cabin was, for the Ming investigators, a profound and terrifying anomaly. It was not a broken mechanism. Its gears moved with a deliberate, rhythmic precision, yet the hands spun counterclockwise, marking the passage of moments that had already been. To the Chinese scholars, steeped in cycles of cosmic order, this was not just a curiosity, but a violation, a blasphemy against the very flow of the Tao. Dr. Chen Lihua, a contemporary expert in horology and ancient Chinese mechanics, notes in her recent study, Temporal Anomalies in Dynastic Records, that while the concept of time's linearity was understood, there were ancient esoteric texts, often linked to Hermetic Taoist practices, that hinted at the possibility of reversing the river of time or sailing against the current of the celestial loom. These were, however, purely philosophical or mystical concepts, never before manifested in such a tangible, terrifying form. The clock itself was a masterwork of Spanish craftsmanship, heavy brass, intricate gears, and a finely balanced pendulum. It bore no discernible magical symbols, no alchemical etchings that might explain its aberrant function. Yet its hands continued their impossible journey, each backward tick a soft, insidious whisper of defiance against the natural order. It suggested that within the Sombra's sealed heart, time itself had not merely stopped, but had been inverted, perhaps for the entire duration of her 30-year disappearance. Imagine the implications. If the clock ran backward, did the air within the cabin, the very molecules, also reverse their decay? Did the light, once absorbed, slowly re-emit? The Ming investigators, though their understanding of such concepts was rudimentary, intuitively grasped the chilling implications. This was not a simple mechanical failure. This was a fundamental subversion of temporal physics. The alchemist, Master Theron, was known to have been deeply engrossed in studies of time and its manipulation. His personal journals, later found amongst the scrolls, spoke of a philosopher's mercury that could distill moments and condense the past. Was the clock a byproduct of his forbidden experiments, a device designed not to tell time, but to bend it? The prevailing theory among the Ming scholars, after much terrified deliberation, was that the Sombra had somehow crossed a temporal boundary, perhaps a rare, naturally occurring phenomenon in the vast, uncharted Pacific, a time eddy, or a chronal current that flowed against the universal stream. The ship, caught in this impossible flow, had been sent backward, or perhaps simply put into a state of temporal stasis, only to be released decades later, still carrying the echoes of its inverted journey. But another, more disturbing hypothesis emerged from the dark corners of the imperial court, whispered by those who believed in the potent, often malevolent, power of ancient curses and forgotten rituals. What if the ship hadn't merely crossed a temporal boundary, but had become one? A self-contained temporal anomaly, a bubble of reversed time, adrift in a world that continued to move forward. This would explain the lack of decay, the preserved crew, the unyielding candle, everything within the Sombra's sphere of influence caught in a backward-flowing current, or perhaps simply immune to the depredations of linear time. The clock, then, was not merely a bizarre object. It was the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra's heart, its impossible beat a testament to a journey that had defied the very fabric of existence. It was a chilling reminder that the ocean, in its vastness, could conceal not only physical wonders, but also portals to realities beyond our comprehension, where the steady march of seconds could be reversed, and the past could return to haunt the present with impossible precision. It was a tick-tock of existential dread, a constant silent question echoing from the depths of the Galleon's mysterious voyage. Among the many impossible phenomena discovered aboard the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra, none was perhaps as viscerally unsettling as the burning candle found submerged in a bowl of brackish water within the sealed cabin. To the Ming investigators, whose understanding of natural philosophy was profound, this was not merely a defiance of scientific principle. It was an act of pure, unholy sorcery. Fire, the element of light and heat, extinguished by water, the element of damp and cold. This was an immutable law of nature. Yet here a flame danced, unwavering beneath the surface of the liquid. The candle itself was a simple beeswax taper, common to the era. Its wick, though blackened from use, glowed with a faint, steady light, casting an eerie, flickering shadow on the surrounding scrolls and instruments. The water in the bowl was murky, a mix of seawater and perhaps some unknown residue, yet it did not boil, did not steam, did not even seem to warm from the presence of the flame. It was as if the fire and the water existed in separate, parallel realities, each oblivious to the destructive potential of the other. Professor Li Chen, a modern expert in historical alchemy and an acclaimed Taoist scholar, suggests that this phenomenon points to a profound manipulation of elemental forces. In ancient alchemical texts, she explains in a recent symposium on anomalous historical artifacts, there are whispers of a cold fire, a flame that burns without heat, sustained by principles alien to our common understanding. It is often linked to the transmutation of spirit, or the crossing of boundaries between the physical and the ethereal. The presence of Master Theron, the alchemist, aboard the Sombra lends significant weight to this hypothesis. His journals, filled with cryptic notes and arcane diagrams, included several passages detailing his research into elemental inversion and the sustaining of contraries. One particularly disturbing entry speaks of his ambition to create a living flame that could exist independent of conventional fuel and oxygen, a fire that drew its sustenance from the very fabric of existence. Was this candle a successful, albeit terrifying, manifestation of his ultimate experiment? A flame sustained not by wax and air, but by the warped temporal field within the cabin, or perhaps by the sheer unnatural energy of the ship itself. Another theory, less scientific and more chilling, posits a spiritual or demonic origin. To the deeply superstitious sailors of the 16th century, and indeed to many Ming officials, a flame burning underwater could only be the work of infernal powers, a sign of a demonic pact or a curse. The very presence of the three keepers, an alchemist, a monk steeped in forbidden texts, and a knight from a shadowy order, would only have amplified such fears. Was the candle a dark blessing, a pact made to ensure the ship's impossible journey, powered by an unholy energy that defied divine law? The unyielding flame, much like the backward-running clock, was a symbol of the Sombra's profound anomaly. It defied the fundamental laws of cause and effect, of elemental interaction. It was a beacon of the impossible, a constant, silent testament to a world turned upside down. It suggested that the ship had not merely voyaged across geographical distances, but had traversed realms where the very rules of reality were rewritten. This candle, burning eternally in its watery prison, became a chilling metaphor for the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra herself, an object of impossible existence, a paradox adrift in a sea of logic. It hinted at the profound, unsettling truth of the Galleon's journey, a voyage into the very heart of the unknown, where fire could burn in water and time could run in reverse, all sustained by a mystery too deep, too ancient, and too terrifying for mortal minds to fully grasp. It was a silent, flickering testament to a world where the veil between the natural and the supernatural had been irrevocably torn. Of all the chilling discoveries within the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra, none carried the same profound existential dread as the sight of her crew. Every man, from the lowliest cabin boy to the stern-faced officers, was found dead, yet perfectly preserved. No signs of decomposition, no skeletal remains, no putrefaction. Their bodies were intact, their skin retaining its natural hue, their features frozen in expressions that hinted at their final moments, some serene, some startled, some simply vacant. It was as if death itself had been suspended, or perhaps meticulously maintained by an unknown force. The Ming investigators, accustomed to the swift, brutal realities of the sea, where bodies swell and decay with horrifying speed, were utterly bewildered. There was no embalming fluid, no mystical preservative, no cold storage, just the natural air within the Galleon, which was, as noted, unnaturally cold and still. Dr. Anya Sharma, a leading forensic anthropologist specializing in historical maritime contexts, describes this phenomenon as biologically impossible under normal conditions. Even in the coldest environments, she explains in her groundbreaking paper, The Frozen Fleet, Unnatural Preservation in Maritime Anomalies. Some form of cellular degradation, some bacterial action, would occur over 3 decades. This suggests a complete cessation of biological processes, or perhaps a reversal of them, consistent with the temporal displacement theories. The men were found at their posts, or in their hammocks, or slumped over tables, as if the moment of their demise had caught them unawares, yet gently. The ship's surgeon, a man named Dr. Esteban, was found in his infirmary, a half-used bandage clutched in his hand, his eyes wide, fixed on a point beyond the bulkhead. His expression was one of dawning, inexplicable horror, as if he had witnessed the impossible just before his life and indeed his very decay was halted. What had killed them? There were no wounds, no signs of violence, no indications of disease or starvation. Their chests were still, their eyes unblinking, yet they seemed to hold the echoes of a final, silent gasp. Was it the temporal shift itself that had claimed them, freezing their life force as it inverted the clock? Or was it something more insidious, a profound psychic shock, a terror so absolute it simply stopped their hearts and their very cellular processes? The presence of the 3 keepers, the alchemist, the monk, and the knight, in their sealed cabin, their own bodies similarly preserved, deepened the mystery. Had they achieved some form of perverse immortality, or were they merely the first victims of their own dangerous experiments? The monk, Brother Silas, was found seated, his hands clasped over the Codex Abyssalis, his face a mask of serene, almost blissful absorption. It was as if he had embraced the final, terrifying truth of their voyage, finding peace in the heart of the anomaly. The knight, Don Raphael, stood sentinel, his hand still on his sword hilt, his eyes open, staring forward, a look of grim determination etched upon his face, as if still guarding the secret, even in death. These silent sentinels, the perfectly preserved crew, were the most haunting aspect of the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra. They were not merely corpses, they were frozen moments, living statues of a past that had returned. They hinted at a form of death that transcended the biological, a cessation of existence brought about by forces beyond human comprehension. They were the ultimate witnesses to the ship's impossible journey, their unblinking eyes holding the silent, terrifying tale of a voyage into the wrong place and the wrong time. Their stillness spoke volumes, a chilling testament to the profound cosmic horror that had claimed them, leaving them as eternal, undecomposing sentinels of the abyss. They were the Sombra's final, most poignant message, a chilling warning etched not on wood, but on flesh. As if the backward-running clock, the unyielding flame, and the perfectly preserved crew were not enough to shatter the sanity of the Ming investigators, a final cryptic detail was discovered etched into the very deck of the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra, not carved with a tool, but seemingly branded, burned into the ancient oak planks with an unknown searing force, the phrase, stark and chilling, sailing against the sun. This inscription, found near the ship's helm, directly beneath where the captain would have stood, was a profound and unsettling revelation. It was not merely a navigational note or a poetic musing. It was a statement of purpose, a declaration of intent that resonated with every other anomaly found on board. Sailing against the sun, a phrase that defied conventional understanding, for all ships sail with or across the sun, charting their course by its passage. To sail against it implied a journey, not just westward or eastward, but against the very flow of natural order, against the very currents of time and causality. Dr. Xiang Li, a leading authority on ancient Chinese cosmology and a scholar of esoteric Western texts, points out the profound symbolism in this phrase. In many ancient traditions, he explains in his treatise, The Cosmic Compass, Navigating the Unseen World, the sun represents order, life, the linear progression of time, and the known world. To sail against the sun is to defy all these. It is to seek the inverted, the unknown, the realm where logic ceases to hold sway. Consider the context. The ship was built in secret, adorned with forbidden symbols, and carried three enigmatic figures: an alchemist, a monk steeped in banned lore, and a knight from a shadowy order. Their mission was shrouded in absolute secrecy, its true destination never officially recorded. The Seville protocols hinted at a royal obsession with knowledge that extended beyond mere geography, into the very nature of existence. The phrase "sailing against the sun" could be interpreted in multiple chilling ways. First, a temporal interpretation. It directly aligns with the backward-running clock. If the ship was indeed trapped in a temporal eddy, or if its journey involved some form of time displacement, then it was quite literally sailing against the current of time. Every moment for the Sombra was a step backward, an unmaking of the past, even as the world around her moved forward. Second, a dimensional interpretation. The phrase might signify a journey into another dimension, a parallel reality where the rules of the cosmos were inverted or profoundly different. The sun could be a metaphor for their own reality, and by sailing against it, they were attempting to breach the veil between worlds, to find a place where the impossible was possible. Third, a spiritual or philosophical interpretation. Given the monk's presence and the ship's name, Nuestra Señora de la Sombra, it could signify a quest for forbidden spiritual knowledge, a rebellion against divine order, or a journey into the shadow realms beyond life and death. The sun, as a symbol of God's light, would be defied by a voyage into the deepest, darkest mysteries. The etching was not merely a message, it was a confession, a testament to the ship's true, terrifying purpose. It was a declaration of defiance, a challenge, thrown not just to the ocean, but to the very fabric of creation. It implied a conscious, deliberate attempt to transgress the boundaries of the known, a voyage into realms where the sun itself might not shine, or where its light might reveal only darkness. The sheer audacity of such an endeavor, imprinted permanently on the deck of a ghost ship found 30 years later and half a world away, left the Ming investigators with a profound sense of awe and dread. The Nuestra Señora de la Sombra was not merely a lost ship, she was a deliberate instrument of cosmic transgression. Her final, silent message, a chilling echo across the decades, a warning that some paths, once embarked upon, lead not to new lands, but to the very unmaking of reality, where one truly sails against the sun and against time itself. The impossible return of the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra, laden with its chilling anomalies, the backward-running clock, the unyielding flame, the perfectly preserved crew, and the cryptic etching of sailing against the sun, left the Ming dynasty, and later, the few Western scholars who gleaned fragments of the truth, grappling with a profound intellectual and existential puzzle. How could a ship defy the very laws of time and nature? While the initial Ming response was suppression and superstition, modern maritime historians and theoretical physicists have since offered several plausible, albeit still terrifying, hypotheses. The most compelling scientific hypothesis revolves around the concept of temporal displacement or localized time dilation. Dr. Eris Thorne, a theoretical physicist at the CERN Institute and a hobbyist maritime historian, posits that the Sombra may have encountered an extremely rare, naturally occurring space-time anomaly. Imagine, he explains in a recent online lecture, a microsingularity, a transient wormhole, or a region of hyper-compressed space-time. If the Galleon entered such a zone, time within its immediate vicinity could have slowed to an almost complete standstill, or even reversed, relative to the outside world. This would explain the lack of decay, the preserved bodies, and the backward-running clock. The ship did not sail for 30 years. It was simply absent from linear time, only to be released decades later, still in its original temporal state. The unyielding flame could be a manifestation of energy sustained by this warped temporal field, or a unique reaction to the altered physics within the anomaly. Another powerful explanation leans into the realm of mass hysteria and psychological phenomena, particularly when considering the initial disappearance. While the Sombra was indeed found, the story of its vanishing and the king's desperate secrecy could have fueled a collective delusion among the crew. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a historical psychologist from the University of California, Berkeley, suggests that the king's obsessive belief in forbidden knowledge, combined with the extreme secrecy and the unsettling symbolism of the ship, could have induced a heightened state of anxiety and suggestibility in the crew. When faced with the truly unknown, she argues, the human mind often defaults to myth-making. The whispers of forbidden knowledge and sailing against the sun could have been self-fulfilling prophecies, driving the crew to collective delusion, or even self-inflicted demise, which then became misinterpreted by later witnesses. However, this hypothesis struggles to explain the tangible evidence of the preserved ship and crew and the physical anomalies found within. A more esoteric, yet increasingly discussed theory involves quantum entanglement or dimensional bleed-through. Some fringe theorists, building upon the Codex Abyssalis and its hints of dimensional cartography, suggest that the Sombra was not merely sailing the ocean, but was deliberately attempting to cross into a parallel dimension. The three keepers, the alchemist, the monk, and the knight, with their combined knowledge of arcane science, forbidden spirituality, and ancient secrets, might have been attempting a deliberate, controlled breach. The ship then became a transient bridge, caught between realities. The backward clock and preserved state could be a bleed-through from the physics of the other dimension, or a consequence of being momentarily unmoored from their own. The Galleon of Three Shadows might have literally become a shadow of itself, a duplicate or an echo returned from an unseen realm. Finally, and perhaps most chillingly, there is the idea that the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra never truly sailed at all in the conventional sense. Instead, it was recreated from the memory of the sea and fear. This concept, often found in ancient myths of thought forms or tulpas, suggests that the intense collective belief, dread, and forbidden intent surrounding the ship's creation and disappearance, combined with the vast, unknown energies of the deep ocean, somehow manifested the vessel decades later. The preserved crew, then, are not truly the original sailors, but spectral echoes, perfect imprints of their final moments, brought into existence by the sheer weight of the mystery. This theory, while bordering on the supernatural, accounts for the ship's perfect preservation and the absence of any conventional decay. The Nuestra Señora de la Sombra remains an enduring enigma. Was she a victim of a unique natural phenomenon, a testament to the fragile boundaries of space-time? Was she a monument to mass delusion, driven by the dark ambitions of a king? Or was she, as the forbidden texts hinted, a deliberate instrument of cosmic transgression, a vessel that dared to sail against the very sun, and in doing so, touched the profound and terrifying truths of the abyss, returning to haunt our reality with the impossible echoes of a journey through time itself? The answers, like the ship herself, remain shrouded in shadow, eternally adrift in the vast, churning sea of the unknown. The tale of Nuestra Señora de la Sombra is a chilling testament to the ocean's boundless capacity for mystery. She was a ship that sailed not merely across waves, but across the very currents of time, a ghost from a past that refused to stay buried. From the king's desperate decree to the haunting sight of her preserved crew, every detail whispers of a reality far stranger than fiction. Was she a victim of a cosmic anomaly, a vessel caught in a fold of space-time? Her voyage a silent defiance of linear existence? Or was she a terrifying monument to human hubris, a ship born of forbidden knowledge that dared to challenge the natural order, only to return as a silent, unblinking witness to her own impossible journey? The theories are many, each more unsettling than the last. But what remains undeniable is the profound existential dread that emanates from her story. The ocean, in its vast, indifferent embrace, held her captive for decades, only to release her, perfectly preserved, into a world she no longer belonged to, a world she had no right to inhabit. She is a reminder that beneath the shimmering surface, beyond the charted routes, lie forces and phenomena that still mock our understanding, secrets that could unravel the very fabric of our perceived reality. The Galleon of Three Shadows is not just a forgotten ship. She is a chilling echo from the edge of the abyss, a silent, black-sailed specter that continues to sail against the sun, forever lost, forever found. What do you believe happened to the Nuestra Señora de la Sombra? Did she truly sail against the sun? Or was she merely recreated from the sea's dark memory? Share your theories and insights in the comments below. And if this journey into the impossible has stirred your soul, remember to like this video and subscribe to the Maritime Chronicler for more voyages into the forgotten depths where history and nightmare collide. Until our next encounter with the unknown, keep your eyes on the horizon, for the sea always holds more secrets than we dare to imagine.